And with that in mind, be respectful. You might not get the answer that you want, but you will get the best answer we can give you today. Number 4, what is next? For us, for you, for the fight that we're in against heroin and all the other drugs that we're having problems with. Don't know that. Maybe we'll reach there when we finish this. I want you to consider, what can you do to make a difference? And also, are you willing to invest your time, talent, and treasure to this cause? And then last, I'm the one who requested those who are on the platform today. At our last seminar, we told you many things you probably already knew. These gathered here are my friends, and I trust them in their judgment, in their honesty, and in their faith. I thank them for taking time out of their busy schedule to be here today. There is one missing who will be here shortly. Senator Bill Beagle will be here to tell you what possibly going on in the state and to answer some questions. But I'll introduce one at a time and go from there, and they can come up and make a statement just to say hi or however else they want to introduce themselves. And ladies first, Mayor Judy for me. Come on, say a few words.
I commend Joe for coming together with all of us to address this problems that we have. We're just kind of new at this, and at the village level, we need a lot of answers also. So I'm definitely here to cooperate with everyone and see what we can do down the road.
Superintendent of Arcanum Schools, Mr. John Stevens.
Again, I appreciate that Joe's invited me here today. Obviously, education is a big piece of the puzzle, and starting with our kids early is a big piece of the puzzle. It was interesting. I got to take a part of, and I see Terry Grieve, who is our school nurse, part of the We Are Majority Walk that was on Monday in Darke County, which is youth-led. It was a great opportunity as some of our student leaders in our county, started by a young lady in Greenville, but we had about 15 participants, which I felt like on a Monday when it's part of our Easter break and not having school, we had kids who were willing to go, and we hopped on a bus and went up there. One of the examples of conversations that we're having with our kids, and we had some of those same kids and some additional kids go Thursday. There was a We Are the Majority Youth March in Columbus. 1,700 students showed up. So we appreciate that, and I'm happy to take any questions. I'll make this statement, which is interesting, and I'll have this conversation with Senator Beagle, and he's well aware of this. I think it's interesting in the state of Ohio that we do not have a health curriculum. And that's a good question to ask. Why don't we have that? However, we do have items in our school board policy that we do cover in regards to health education and some requirements, and specifically with opioid abuse as well. But I think it's something interesting that we should ask our local legislators, why is that the case? But that does not stop us from what we do locally and the curriculum that we adopt. So, yeah, if you have any questions, hopefully I'll be able to answer them today, and I appreciate you coming out.
Chief Deputy Mark Whittaker.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Whittaker. I'm with your county sheriff's office. I guess I'm making an assumption most of you are from Darke County. And I want to thank everyone for asking us to come up here and engage the community and have you have the opportunity to ask us questions. And I will do the best to answer my questions that are in my area because in 2006, 2007, 2008, when we started to see this starting to surface and the deaths started increasing, the overdoses started increasing in the county. The first few years, law enforcement, the coroner's office, and other areas kind of felt like we were on our own at first. And I wish this was not happening to our society and to our county and to our state, but it is. And I sure appreciate the community involvement that's starting to happen the last 2 years, especially the last 12 months. It's things like this that We're going to have to do it as a community because we can't do it. Law enforcement can't do it by themselves. The judge can't do it. Mental health can't do it by themselves. This is going to be a community thing, and this is how it starts right here. Thank you for your coming.
The Honorable Judge Hein.
Thank you, folks, for coming out today. I was thinking as I drove from Greenville down here, how this is different, and the difference is in the church, not in what we do. The chief and deputies and law enforcement have been arresting people for drug abuse forever. And I started in the prosecutor's office, we prosecute crimes, now in the court we deal with the administration of justice in those crimes. That's been going on forever. The difference is opiates are affecting a lot bigger part of the population. It's not a marginalized bunch of people that are using it. It's pretty much across all economic lines. So the difference today, first time for me in 30-some years, not today, but in recent memory, is the public is getting much more engaged. And I hope today is a good opportunity for you to take that another step further, because this has been going on forever, but you haven't been. And we want to be able to tap into it. So I think the solution isn't going to be what the chief can do or what I can do or what the schools can do. They have a part and a role, but the big impact is out there in the public. So we ought to get into that. Thanks.
And the Hope and Recovery Director, Reverend John Wilshire. Save the best for last. Pastor's always going to have to stick together now.
Right.
Yeah, I represent a Christian-oriented recovery program that consists primarily of 3 meetings a week and then other support systems. And I'm kind of here representing the continuing education. Last time we were here, wellness and recovery, and there's a lot of in-house programs there, outpatient type things. But once a person completes all that, then it's your AA meetings, your NA meetings, hope and recovery meetings that carry the long-term recovery. So I'm kind of representing all those programs today.
Again, thank you all for being here. You're all dismissed. No, just it was all really too quiet out there. Now is your part. Like I said, last time we got together, people asked questions, wrote on the card. I hope you continue to do that. Write something on the card and let us know who you are, why you're here. But now it's up to you. Do you have a question for any of these, this lady or any of these gentlemen? The microphone's there, and the reason I put the microphone down there, you have to speak into it like this so everybody can hear, because it's just the way it is. So who wants to be first to ask a question? It's going to be a short meeting. Never mind. I figured Gary would be the first one up here. Oh, I'm sorry.
You're right.
The Mayor of Wayne Lakes, Mr. Very young.
Couple questions for the school. Is there any thoughts of mandatory drug testing at all in the mill?
We have not had that conversation as a school board. That is a trend. There are several Miami County schools that do have, and it's not just random drug testing. It's been random drug testing with extracurriculars, athletes, band members, etc. That has not been a discussion, and not that it's interesting. I guess to go back, we have a school resource officer this year. Many questions I had about the school resource officer was about safety and security. However, we go back a couple years, and the Chief Deputy Mark Whittaker and I, and in fact Judy as well, all attended some of the same meetings. And actually, the idea of adding a school resource officer came from the issues in regards to drugs. Now, specifically as far as students who have been caught with any types of drugs in school is minimal, but we also know that just because we haven't caught students doing so doesn't mean that they aren't doing them. We do random canine drug searches when we had one already this year. But I guess, again, to go back to your question, that's not been a topic of our Board of Education, no, sir.
For the judge, is that same drug testing being considered for people that are receiving public assistance? I was hoping Beagle would be.
Not my expertise, so I can only really speak to the people we deal with. It's a political issue about whether people receiving public benefits should be drug tested or not, so I don't have the answer to that. It's controversial. But on the apprehension side, after somebody gets picked up through whatever law enforcement agency and then they're in the court system, regularly they're drug tested pre-trial before there's any kind of a disposition of the case. If they're on supervision, regularly they're drug tested. It's the only way to be able to verify what's going on. It's bread and butter work you have to do. Because I can look at you and see your lips move, it doesn't mean I have to believe you. And as soon as I can put a test to it, then we're going to find out what's really going on. The question is, what do you do with that information? If the school tests it randomly, personally I like the idea, but it's a school policy. You have to figure out what you're going to do with that dirty test. Because now it's productive people, it's people with jobs. It might be your best athlete who's test positive for marijuana. What are you going to do with that person? How are you going to handle it? Because the philosophy can't be simply to punish. There has to be a consequence. The school already has it. Policy says you might lose a game, you might lose 3, whatever the policy steps are. We don't reward those, but the philosophy in society is going to change, has been for 5 or 6 years. How do we develop ways to solve that problem? Why do you use the drug? Not the fact that you use one, we should punish it. Because punishment by itself won't change the use, it might actually increase it. So, kind of got away from your question, but dealt with where I was.
Yeah, I've only got one other comment, and it's a concern, and we've discussed it. I'm concerned with our emergency rescue services, the expense that it's costing. And there's going to be a point somewhere where somebody has to say, whoa, and I don't know what the answer is. But Tribal Aid Rescue, which I'm a trustee, we write off thousands and thousands of dollars every year from people that don't pay, and now we've got this on top of it, so it's going to be an issue.
Thank you, Gary. And I will say that Senator Beagle did text me this morning. He said he definitely will be here, but he was at an event for his daughter, and he would be here as close to 2 o'clock as he could. So when he gets here, you can ask the question again, because that's what we brought people together for. Who's next? Come on, Russ. Well, while Russ is walking forward, he is the blame for all of this. He instigated the first one, and he said, well, what are we doing for the second one? And I was foolish enough to fall for it. So that's why we've all gathered together today. But thanks, Russ, for caring. Go ahead. Who is it for? Speak in the microphone.
Okay, give me a second. I gotta go. Well, the reason I started it, the reason I felt strongly about this was because my daughter is a heroin user, and she's on methadone now. And she's doing better, but I got 2 grandkids who go to the Arcanum school. And I was concerned, are we doing enough for the little kids? Because we need to talk to the little kids when they're small. So that was my biggest concern. You know, so that's the reason, you know, I feel strongly because it ended up in my backyard. So one of the questions I want to ask, and this is probably for the guy that's not here, but I want to ask him, what happens to the drug money that is found? Let's say like the drug lords that got caught on 70 the other day, there was like a whole bunch of money got caught, and they do properties and all this, and I think that monies could go to what they've done to our kids. That's the way I think. And then the other one is...
Let somebody respond to that.
Okay.
So you remember. Chief Deputy Whittaker, would you like to?
I can respond to that to some degree. So what happens when law enforcement either does an interdiction on a highway and happens to come across a lot of money that's connected to drugs, or we engage in months-long investigation on a drug dealer and we recover money? In Darke County, I'm going to tell you historically, that has not happened very many times, and it doesn't happen very often. The drug traffickers in Darke County are not big-time drug dealers, okay? So it's not common for us to find the kind of money that you sometimes read in the newspapers. But to answer the question, either way, law enforcement has legal processes they have to go through. And first is they have to, the prosecutor, prosecuting attorney or the United States attorneys, if it's a federal case, they have to make a connection between all of the money that's found and all of the property and show that it was ill-gotten gains. In other words, that the person who possessed it or owned it was engaged in criminal conduct. And it doesn't just have to be drug dealing. It could be organized crime where they're stealing from people. Once they are able to prove that, then a court decides essentially whether the property is forfeited and how it's forfeited. In some cases, the property is put up on for auction and it's sold, and then it's spread amongst prosecuting attorneys. It could be court ordered for attorney fees, if that, in some cases maybe. It could be, it could end up in the hands of the law enforcement agencies and spread out amongst the law enforcement agencies. And when they go into certain accounts that are controlled, they have to be used for certain things. Like under drug asset forfeiture, we have to use it for investigative purposes, but with a drug nexus of some sort, okay? Now, as far as using it to put it back towards treatment or education, you know, that's something that, yeah, the guy we're waiting for, you might want to ask him about that. And I can't tell you whether there's any legislation that allows for that at this point, but a lot of times it's spread amongst law enforcement to cover the cost. But we don't make money, at least in Darke County. We're not making money off of drug dealers. It is a rare occasion for us to come across that property and things of that. Our asset forfeiture money is very minimal.
Thank you. Chief, could you use that money for school resource officers, drug fine forfeiture money?
I believe we can. I believe we can.
But generally, you're not a social service agency.
No, we are not.
So most of what he's going to do is not put it into taking care of children. It's going to be what he does: apprehension, arrest, investigations.
Right.
The only thing about the arrest part of it, people like me paying for my kids' problems, okay? You know, I'll use a good example, the methadone. She's on methadone now. It only costs a little over $500 a month to go to Richmond, but at least she can work and do a productive job. You know, some people are saying, well, you know, our tax money shouldn't go to things like that, but Pike County, I'm going to use a good example. They've been working on that case for a year, and they hadn't found nobody. You don't hear too much about the investigation part of it, but they did say in the beginning there was a marijuana growing operation on all them, so they were putting dope into our society. Did they deserve to die? No. But it wasn't from the Mexico cartel or what, but I have a problem with that. So our tax money did go to help solve that case, and now they got a big reward out of it. So, you know, so I'm balancing oranges and apples now. Well, you know, at least she is productive, but we don't have a clinic in the Greenville area or anything like that right now.
We do. Not a methadone clinic, because our community chose not to use an opiate to replace an opiate. So we do have, in addition, the medical providers here do provide naltrexone and Vivitrol,
Can you go to the microphone?
which are other options. So there's an option here in Darke County. Methadone is an opiate. So
I
you're
understand.
giving people opiates to fight opiates. It's a different kind. It has different properties. So understand, we do have, Family Health is very proactive in pain management, opiate interdiction. So you don't have to go to Richmond, but you won't get methadone here. You'll get naltrexone, $2 a day. That's right. Tablets are $2 a day, I think.
Well, it
And
costs
then
me
Vivitrol's-
$16 a day.
Yeah, Vivitrol is $1,000 a month.
Okay.
But don't give up on us, because there's a lot of resources going into it. That's why I jump up and say, we do have options here. They're different than what
Well,
we did.
the other thing on that methadone, Clint, Okay, so they got 500 people going over there a day. Yeah, I don't know if people realize that. And they look like nurses and they're well-dressed people. And then there's little kids, it just tears me up when I go over there. But these kids, what they're being put through. But $16 a day at 500 a week, that's $160-some thousand a week going to, where's all this money going? I mean, and it's gotta be cash money. Gotta be cash. And that's just mindful, but at least she's productive. You know, we got people on diabetes, we got people, I mean, if they can function, because she was recovered for 2 years, and then she went back to it. And the way I understand, I've never done it, I've never done anything like that, but the way I understand it, I'll give you some background on me. I worked for Procter & Gamble for 24 years. I was a hog farmer. Matter of fact, I went in front of me one time on the creek, it said. And then, so I'm still farming a little bit today. I work on a hog farm again. And so, and I always went to church. I thought I brought her up right, did the best I could. But she just got with the wrong people, and this is where we're at today. It was from the Arcanum area. That's what we've always did. So that's why I'm saying we can't turn our back. It's up to the community. You all can't fix the problem, but we got to group together and get it fixed. But
If I can go back and just kind of explain what we're, no, you're okay, and explain what we're doing. Some things are very specific towards opioids now. In the elementary, it's more about making good choices. And one of the things, and just for clarity too, the school resource officer is through a partnership with the village, our village council and our school board decided for multiple reasons, including the drug epidemic, that it was a good decision. So it is your taxpayer dollars, whether it's through the school or through the village. Basically, we contract and the village charges for the number of days that he works at school. So the number of days that our kids are in school, approximately 180 days per year. And so one thing that we focused on, this is just year one, we focused on with Officer Hein is getting to know the elementary students and building up the trust. When he goes in and talks to those students, again, it's more general. As we've gotten to the middle and high school, some of you know Kelly Harrison from recovery in the county. She comes in to speak to 7th graders 3 times a month. And again, some of it's about healthy choices. But we get into a little bit more specifics with different types of drugs and drug abuse. When we get to the high school, recently, this past spring, we added to our board policy as required by law, and I probably just so I can read it verbatim. Prescription opioid abuse prevention is part of the curriculum with an emphasis on the prescription drug epidemic and the connection between prescription opioid abuse and addiction to other drugs such as heroin. So it's become more specific that let's just not talk about drugs in general, let's talk more specifically. The Ohio Department of Education has provided resources and pretty good resources so that our teachers can use those things. We have a few of our health teachers are actually going this June. Sharon DeChambeau from the Chamber has been working on providing some professional development for these teachers so they know some of the specifics to talk about. We've brought in a variety of speakers. These speakers are typically for high school students because we get a little bit more real. Someone from the coroner's office has been in. We've had a widow from someone who was locally. She came in. We've had a rehab counselor from Richmond that's come in. Annually, when it comes to prom time, we talk about choices, and usually our SAD club brings someone in. Not to say that's been specifically about opioids or heroin, but on drug abuse. So I would say, and I'm an Arcanum graduate, and I remember in the 90s receiving some general drug education, you know, just say no, back when Nancy Reagan. It's more specific now. The resources are more specific and are covered throughout the health classes. As I did mention before, there's not a specific health curriculum in the state of Ohio. But there are resources, and we do we do cover various aspects. And so, again, the higher we go into high school, the more specific we get. We've had the prosecutor, assistant prosecuting attorney in the county has come in to our schools as well. We are looking at planning a night. We've done so in the past, and I think maybe Chief Deputy Whittaker was at an event. Different topic. On the night that we have parent-teacher conferences, we have held some events. They've not been very well attended. But if we have 5 people, that's 5 people that maybe didn't hear the message. We're looking at next fall. I recently went to, and one of our counselors went with me. There's a I just went blank on the gentleman's name, but he basically sets up a bedroom of a teenager. And there are 40 to 50 different red and yellow flags as your child might, because many times, you raise your kids right. My kid's not into drugs. It's amazing all the things that are being marketed out there. Maybe it's something else, but the kids can hide drugs and everything. It's a whole other perspective. Again, we have a K-9 unit come in, and anytime they hit a locker, then we go through the locker and we go through those contents of the locker. I had a different perspective because I thought I was thorough before, but there's all sorts of mechanisms that you never would think would be something that kids could hide drugs or something that would point to them having drug use. We're going to bring him back probably at the same time in the fall next year and hopefully get some people in to see that because it's very, very eye-opening.
Thank you. Well, next question, it's kind of, I went up to the recovery center, if I get the name right, but I wanted to know what the percentage of recovery addicts they had, and I could not get that.
I can answer that. Maybe 10%. 90% of the people will never completely recover.
But is that out of 1,000 or is that out of 100? That's what they gave me. And I didn't understand that part of it.
I talked to a guy a few years ago, and we had about 100 people a year would walk through our program. Some would only stay 1 week. Maybe 10% of them. So whether it's 100 or 10,000, it's 10%. Now, we have found that as they get more involved, a person gets a couple of years sobriety, it's a lot more likely then to stay clean. But it's not real high. But you got it's frustrating.
Well, my thing is, I go back to the little kids, and if they know them kids are in them homes, why aren't we checking up on them, seeing where we're at? Because I know what my daughter would have done. She's too busy with her addiction. The poor kids at home, they're hungry, and they're not being they're out on the streets front. And we need to check up on these people if they got kids in their homes.
There is a program in the county that's been here for years. Children's Services gets involved. The children are assigned what's called a CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocates, and they actually represent the child, and they do a lot of home visits along with Children's Services. So if that person has gotten into the court system, if they've never been caught, then our juvenile court, common police court, they're the kind of the umbrella. But there are programs out there to check on the children. So I've did it for years.
I can expand on that a little bit. Okay, so as the so-called epidemic has overwhelmed some of our resources over the last several years, that's one of the things that is addressed is the kids that are in the homes of those that are addicted, abusing, and even trafficking, unfortunately, okay? So how do we deal with that? And that is something that we recently, the police chiefs in the county had a meeting just within the last several weeks because we feel that we're not doing as good as we'd like to do, okay? That resulted in a meeting a combined meeting with the Children's Services folks, as well as the county prosecuting attorney and the attorney that works for Children's Services. Understand there's two different things going on. There's child protection and then there's potential criminal prosecution for child endangering. They're two separate things. Some people don't realize that, okay? So what Children's Services has said was they are willing to step up and work a little more closely with law enforcement. We already work pretty close with them, but sometimes when children are in these homes, and I'll give you an example, what do we do when both parents are addicted, but when law enforcement and rescue is called to the house, and it's just one parent that's, say, down, unconscious, unresponsive, we're taking care of him, and the female mother is also maybe has an addiction problem, but at that time she's not in a situation where she's sober enough that we can't do anything about it, but we find out about these things as a part of it. Well, what we want to do is, everybody's entitled to constitutional rights, okay? Nobody wants the government sticking their nose in your business until you're ready for us to stick our nose in your business and things are really going sideways. So we have to be a little bit careful about that, but at the same time, we're looking at creating a protocol. We call them drug endangered children, okay? We first recognized this and called them this when we had illegal drug labs for methamphetamine, when that came to our table several years ago. 1998 is the first drug lab we had in Darke County. We saw it there because the kids were in these environments and we went to address them. Well, now see, that's expanded on to what happens when both parents are substance abusers and things like that. So we're putting together a protocol. We're training officers how to better respond. Don't just focus on the person who's overdosed laying on the ground and who's dying, but we also have to think about the kids that are in the background, and we have to go inside if we can lawfully go inside, look at the house, what kind of conditions are there, and we've worked with Children's Services and the prosecutor. We want to be just a little bit more aggressive on making sure that these things are taken care of. And then we're going to take it a step further when we go to these things, and we're talking about forming a team of a paramedic, a law enforcement officer, and a social services or an addiction services person to go to these places where someone has overdosed, knocked on the door a couple days later and say, where you at, how's things going, do you mind letting us in? We're here to help. We're here to connect you with through social services to recovery services if you want them. You understand, if these folks don't want to do it and they're not at that point in your life, we can't necessarily make them, but that's also an opportunity for law enforcement and paramedics to get in, take a look at the house. Is there food in the cupboards? Are the kids going to school like they should? We've talked to school officials, and I've been attending meetings about once a month with school officials throughout the county, talking, because they learn a lot at the school that we don't, believe it or not, don't know about. And what we need to do is we need to have cross-agency communication, right? Because we have to be willing to talk to each other. There's one thing that this epidemic has created, and that is bringing lots of people to the table. Big, huge round tables of people talking across the table that, unfortunately for you, historically we have not always been very good at. But it is happening now. So there's lots of things that maybe the citizens don't always know, but it is happening. I'm talking to more social workers, more mental health folks. I'm talking to more school superintendents than probably I had when I first started this 30 years ago. So there's things in play, and they are not forgotten when we're working through it.
Let me tag on to that. When the schools get together with the law enforcement and the courts, it's not that simple. The Coalition Darke County website is a place to go to look for information. So coalitiondarkecounty.com. But you'll see a place in there for people to sign up and say, I'm supportive of it, and then I'm willing to do something. But the outreach to churches right now is paramount. Thank you, Pastor Fisher, for being here, because your church doesn't just talk about it, they do it. There's a place for every church. Joe, thank you for opening the door to say we got to take this issue, bring it in here, but then it has to go out again. So it's not just looking to the professional agencies, the government agencies, the social agencies. Deep down inside, this is going to have to go to the family level. In the average case, when somebody comes through and they have to take a child out of the house, I hope you know that a government agency doesn't usually have that child. They're going to look for family members, then they're going to look for connected people before they say we're going to have a foster parent in place. And that's where you want to start getting yourself involved. It may not be your family, and I hope it's not, but you can't afford to say, good, I dodged the bullet, because if you know your neighbor's got this going on, and there's a bunch of little kids running around over there, maybe you need to start buddying up with that family, because when the parents can't do it, and there's no other responsible relative around, we see it all the time, the next connected person might be Bill and Angie Sowers, who I would want my kids with, because they're good folk.
Yes, that's my
But it's
sister.
not gonna be, that's your sister? Sorry, Angie. You know, you need to have everybody get involved with this. So if it doesn't hit your family, be ready with a needy family to step in. And maybe the interdiction can happen with you, not with the law enforcement agency.
I agree.
Because it has to happen really faster than somebody getting to the point where they overdose.
Right.
So Coalition Darke County is a place to go to get information too. So if you're looking for resources, if you're looking for referrals, if you want to know who's plugged in, you would find out on that website that Darke County has medically assisted treatment. So you don't have to go to Richmond or Dayton. And we turned down partnering with Richmond because we don't believe in methadone. We chose the county to not give opiates to opiate users. Vivitrol, the drug we use here, is an anti-opiate. It blocks opiates. So that was our approach.
I got one more question, and I'll quit. Please.
Before you do that, let's have Senator Beagle introduce himself.
Okay.
Of course, you know that he came a little late. I told you he'd be a little late, but I also told you he'd be here. Well, you know, sometimes you have to take care of family. And even when you're, well, all the time. Sometimes family has to come first. And that's okay. So, Senator Beagle, if you'd like to stand and speak and tell whatever you'd like to.
Well, I am Bill Beagle. Thank you, Joe, for having me here. Joe and I ran into each other last weekend, and he invited me to come out. I was at my daughter's final choir competition this afternoon, being the volunteer parent there. So here I am, and representing the state, because I think, and forgive me for not having been part of this and being too redundant, but obviously there's a place for the state to play, a role for the state to play in all of this, and we get a lot of questions about it. And it is, if you want to talk about something that's unifying to all the Republicans and all the Democrats across the entire state of Ohio, it's the opiate problem. It touches every district, whether you're down in Appalachia or up in Ashtabula or somewhere over in Toledo. It is everywhere. It's in our rural communities, it's certainly in our cities, and it is the one thing that we can all agree on is a huge problem. And we've been doing a lot to try and solve it. So should I just run over a few things?
Sure, go ahead.
And I'm happy to stay and answer questions. I think at a high level, we've passed, I think, 14 bills and counting over the last 6 or 7 years regarding everything from pill mills to opiates in an effort to try and get out ahead of this problem. And let me review a few things that we have been doing as we try to work with our locals. And you see here, we've got the state, the county level, we've got local governments, the faith community, the judicial system, all law enforcement, all wrapping together. That's just on this stage in this small town in Darke County, and things like this are happening all across the state. Some of the things that we're doing, we are working to address increases in fentanyl-related deaths. For those of you who are probably familiar with the increase in fentanyl being laced inside heroin. So we're working to address that, and I can, through the question Q&A, I can go into details if you want. We're also trying to improve pathways to treatment and recovery. That's part of the solution as well, is to make sure that those who want to turn their lives around have the access to do that. And there's some challenges with that, both in terms of having the number of people who can qualify as counselors, as well as some dollars and space in places in terms of treatment and recovery. We're trying to crack down on drug trafficking and the flow of drugs, and putting traffickers in jail, trying to figure out who needs to be in jail and who doesn't need to be in jail. And traffickers certainly need to be in jail. Certainly a part of it is preventing drug use before it starts. The governor has had his Start Talking program for a long time, where we as parents and grandparents need to talk to our children about taking drugs and not taking drugs and the dangers of taking drugs. Because as we're all aware, all it takes is one fentanyl-laced dose of heroin you get. And that can be tragic. We're also working on controlling the use and availability of pain medications. You may be aware of the number of people who get addicted to heroin through legitimate pain prescriptions. And if there is any ray of light in what is going on, is that the number of accidental overdoses because of prescription pain medication is actually decreasing over the last 4 years. But trying to make sure that we have fewer prescriptions in medicine cabinets is part of the solution. And the governor just really recently, within the last couple weeks, issued an order where for people like me who maybe had a crown done, instead of getting 2 weeks of a stiff painkiller, of which I take 1 pill, and have 13 sitting in my cabinet for who knows, my teenagers could be doing who knows what, you know, you're going to get 3 days with. And if you need more, there's a path that you can get more, but it's going to take a little bit of effort on our part just to avoid and cut down the number of legitimate prescriptions that are laying around. Because it's well documented how people, they get their 30 days, the next month their 30 days is gone in a week, and then they're stealing from people, and they just go down this path. And then the other thing that we've worked on is expanding access to Narcan, and which you're all familiar with Narcan. It started out as a 2-county project, actually, a pilot project, and it started saving people so quickly that we very quickly pushed out the availability of Narcan and making more doses available across the state for this life-saving drug. And so it's availability of Narcan, it's putting traffickers away, it's getting kids to be aware of drugs at the beginning, it's trying to give our local law enforcement the tools they need, it's counseling. All these things are some things that we're working together through money and laws at the state level to help these guys do their job. So with that, I think that's probably a good thing. We'll turn it back over to questions.
Well, I think Superintendent of Arcanum Schools had a question for you.
Yikes.
Well, we were just talking about
We're not even getting to the people yet.
Fair enough.
We're hitting you right
Ohio. Well, recently, I mean, I talked about the prescription opioid abuse prevention. We were required to put that into board policy because of legislative action, and so that was recent. The overall topic of health curriculum, Ohio does not have a health curriculum. There are resources and options to start talking is one of them. The idea that Ohio does not have a health curriculum is not related to the drug abuse. So I guess the question was, you know, why hasn't the state of Ohio initiated a full curriculum?
So the answer is, I'll have to speculate a little bit as to why we tend to, at the state level, we tend to meddle in education from time to time, don't we? So that is what we are, has been suggested to us. And in terms of why haven't we come up with a specific curriculum for health, maybe just a lack of desire to get overly prescriptive and allow our locals a chance to set that curriculum would be an answer. Now, we do delve into areas in history and government and some things where we do kind of dictate what kind of curriculum. We've got the 3rd grade reading guarantee, so we tend to step in and out of what we require of our students. So, you know, there are ways that through the legislative process we could probably enact some sort of basic health curriculum or something to work in some of the drug stuff. At the rate we're going, you know, it would be a couple of years, maybe a year if you're lucky, before you can see that as an action on the ground that your students may see, maybe 2 years. But it is something that we could do. In terms of why we haven't so far, I'm guessing is it's just a chance for our locals to make those decisions, or this may be perhaps the first true statewide health crisis that many of us have faced, and so we haven't really seen a need for the legislature to step in because the locals have been able to handle everything well. So as our students, maybe they're struggling in math scores, and so we step in there, or reading scores, so we step in there. Maybe because we haven't had a health crisis or anything that really hasn't drawn our attention to it.
Not that I'm promoting
I know you are
more
not asking me to
legislation
get
for
involved,
schools.
'cause You'll never be welcome to a superintendent meeting again.
But there has been, you know, in the last year or so, at least more resources coming from the Ohio Department of Education. And I think, you know, I would agree with the concept that, while core standards are important, being dictated curriculum is not, as long as we have the resources and also the professional development. And I do think it's more meaningful, as I talked about, we have a few of our health teachers that are going to some professional development in June, and that's being done locally. I do think there's power in that, as opposed to it coming down from the state, so.
And if there's, and we can have a conversation online, if there's ways we can get guidance through the Department of Health, or have the Department of Health and Department of Education work together, which may not be a relationship, obviously, they probably work together at some level, but they may or may not be communicating on this particular topic. There's some things we can do to facilitate that, short of telling you what you need to teach your students. Because I know that's not risk.
I don't think you've done yet.
Fair enough.
Mary Young had a question for you. Mary, ask the question again.
But a couple things that you mentioned the other day to us was the illegal drug pushers, and you know who those are. And I believe the figure was...
Russ, I was just trying to catch up with the, you still have your last question.
And I understand that it was a very high figure of how much prescription had been given out in the United States,
It's enormous.
that every man, woman, and child would get 10 years of it or something like that. So that is the issue we got to deal with, and I understand when you told me it's only been recently that there has been any tracking of who gives out these prescriptions. And we wonder what the problem is. You know, they get moms, dads, granddaughters, whatever stuff, and away they go.
Yeah, it is difficult. It is more difficult for people to doctor shop. We have this prescriptive system, ORS, which is an acronym, which I won't bore you with because I don't really remember it. But ORS is a system whereby the pharmacists can, I think, can track and see who's getting medications from various places, and so it would become you become identified if you're filling the same prescription or something similar, and it's a way to prevent a number of problems we have. So it makes it more difficult to doctor shop through the ORS system. You're right.
Yeah, the law was out there for some time, and only one person could prescribe an opiate. But yet, again, there was no way to track it. I had a daughter that she was given 3 different prescriptions from 3 different people, and yet nothing done.
Right, and it goes beyond just the heroin stuff. It's to make sure you aren't getting conflicting prescriptions from 2 different pharmacists who aren't aware of what's going on that could be problematic. And it's probably actions like that that have led to a reduction in the prescription overdose deaths or things like that.
But last, to me, the overall big question is, we have rehab. I think you made the comment how many times it works. I don't know what the answer is, but somehow from rehab, I have a great niece that's been there 4 times. She overdosed 2 weeks ago again. Somehow, everybody knows about peer pressure, friend pressure. It's not just drugs, it's alcohol. That's how a lot of it starts. How, from rehab, you prevent returning them to the same environment that they were in, I don't know what's going to change.
That's a point well taken.
Well, the only question I had was, if you know there's a person's a convicted drug addict over and over, and let's say if we did this drunk driving, you stuck a different license plate, there's been a lot of head-on collisions, and there's been a lot of people killed by, and I'm speaking for my daughter too, you know. I hate to put a label on it, but we might have to. So we know to be for the safety part of the community.
Go ahead, Joe. Let me tackle that. That's not just drugs. That is any problem in society. I mean, right now we're talking about opiate abuse and what that does, but everybody in life has got some sort of stressor. These folks got stressors, you got stressors, I got stressors, everybody's got stressors that cause us to act some way that's not healthy. Now, a lot of people use drugs to try to mask the problem with the stressor. It might be their job or lack of job, it could be bad relationships, poor housing, food, pick the stressor, it doesn't matter. The answer to opiate abuse is to answer the problem, how do I solve the stressor? So take somebody that you know, recognize what their stressor is, and figure out how you can help that person. Because that stressor is going to relapse.
I truly
The
can
same
answer
way-
that because my daughter,
Yeah,
I can truly answer it, but I'm saying, I don't want her to go out and kill somebody.
that's right. But you gotta deal with the stressor,
Yes.
not the opiate use.
And when they are on that, they don't even know where they're at. It's where, I used to drink when I was younger. I never was in that kind of, I've seen her just out of it. And I'm going, it's a whole different cat now than it was when I was a kid.
With what we do at the courthouse, we expect, John Wiltshire expects relapse. We expect people to fail. We don't reward it, we don't tolerate it, we don't encourage it, we expect it. We're not surprised.
Right.
So do yourself a favor, don't be surprised.
I'm not surprised.
When it happens, be ready for it. And what we do with it, how you handle it is the answer. And you could be sober for 5 years, run through some sort of stressor you can't deal with on your own, not reach out to somebody that can help, not have a mentor or sponsor, whatever you want to call it, and relapse right back into it. And that's why dealing with the stressor has to happen. It could be they relapse into alcoholism. It could be they relapse into gambling. It could be they relapse into not taking care of the kids because they're not able to take care of themselves.
I understand
It's
what
a
you're
bigger,
saying.
it's a bigger picture.
But I also understand, I've been to a lot of courts here in the last year, and we walk in, and they got a prosecuting attorney come up, and they said, Josie, they put their arm around her and say, I got you a $150 fine, and you're free to go. Well, so we go up into another line, and I said, Dad ain't paying for it. So she's in that line, they go, oh, just pay what you can, and then we go around, and then another 2 months later, we go back around that same loop. And you talk about stress, you keep finding them, and it's like she got picked up for a blinker, but they got her for a suspended license. It wasn't nothing to do with drugs, but they put another fine to her. Well, I can see where she's stressed, but some of us don't, but she's got to go to work too. So I'll tell you what, stress,
I do want to make a statement real quick. If you have a question that you think that Judge Hein or Senator Beagle needs to answer, they're both going to be leaving about 30 minutes early. They're going to be leaving about 3:30, so.
I'm right here.
We're all here for a reason. Where?
House of God. Supposed to tell the truth. This hasn't only affected myself, but it's affected all of you. Your daughter, your son, your children, your neighbors, kids you babysit with. My children, my family, my brothers and sisters, my nephews and nieces. Am I telling the truth? You know me as a man. Right. Am I telling the truth? 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 It has affected everybody here. The question. There is a question. Wow. Stressor. Boy, is this not stressing us all out? It's stressing me out. Why? Can you answer that?
Because of what you've been through.
Can you answer that? I know you can answer that. Judy, you know me. Am I an honest man?
To my knowledge, you are.
Am I trustworthy?
To my knowledge, you are trustworthy.
Okay. I have nothing to lie here. I have nothing to lie about.
Neither do you. But guess who this is affecting? It's affecting you more than it's affecting me. Because you're not my neighbors. You might not even live in this town. But what it's affected me, there's a few people missing here, isn't there?
Do you have,
Wow.
do you have a question?
I do have a question.
Okay.
You'll answer the question. Is it not our time to say something?
It's your time to ask questions, so everybody else
Okay.
has time to ask.
I'm coming.
Okay.
Here's a question. Has this not affected all of us? Huh?
That's why we're here.
Okay. Will you let me speak?
You have been
In this
speaking.
house.
You have been speaking.
In this house. Thank you. We're missing somebody from the fire department. We're missing our chief of police here. Where's he at?
I can answer that, sir. I am his boss.
Okay, Judy.
He did have a commitment today.
All right.
And I told him I would represent him.
Thank you very much. How many deaths have been related into this town, specifically in the last 8 months? The last 12 months? Wow, I know how many. What happens when a drug addict or a person in this town ODs and the ambulance is called and they're administered Arcanum? How many doses do you give? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? How many do you give? What's the requirements of that? Who pays for that? What happens when they get out from their recovery? Come out of the hospital 2 hours later, 2 days later, 3 days later. Wow, they're called again. How many doses of Narcan do they administer to them?
Do you have an answer to that, Chief Deputy?
Wait a minute, I'm not finished.
Well,
No,
there
no,
might be
no,
some-
no, 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 no. I've waited way too long for this, son. Way too long.
First of all, I'm not your son.
Well, you are the son of God, aren't you? Aren't you one
No,
of
I'm
his
not the-
children?
I'm one of his children.
All right,
I'm
so
not
am
the son
I.
of God.
Let me say what I got to say.
Well,
Because
ask-
you know,
ask-
no,
please ask your
please,
question.
please. A lot of these people know me. A lot of these people are angry. A lot of these people can't say what I will say for them. I am here for them, not for me, not for you. Them.
So what is your...
That's why I'm. Why? Why am I here?
That's what I'm trying to find out.
I'm speaking to you guys. I'm speaking to you guys. Why am I here? Whoa. Do you want to answer that?
I already did. Because of what you've been through.
Why am I here?
Because you lost a friend to this.
I lost a friend to this. My brother's addicted to this. I saved his life. I sponsored a boy out of the Monday program. I tried to save his life. I found him dead on my bathroom floor. And I treated this boy as a child, as a friend, as a kid, because nobody wanted him. I took him in. A girl down the street. I told the police. I listened to me, sir.
listen.
I told the police what happened to her. She died of an overdose too.
First of all...
Now this is, first of all, what, you gonna arrest me?
I'm not gonna arrest
You
you.
gonna touch me?
First of all, this
What?
is a discussion.
Yeah, this is a discussion. Why did this happen?
It's for asking questions.
Why? This is a question. Where was our police department at?
No,
That's the question.
It's okay, Bruce. It's okay. It's okay.
I'm asking all of us. I'm asking all of us. Am I wrong to say what I'm allowed to say? Am I allowed not to say the First Amendment right? I am a loud person.
We have gathered
This
here.
is
We gathered here for a reason.
my stressor. This is my
I
stressor.
understand it. And you're everybody else.
You know what? Yeah, I am stressed. I'd be stressed too. I'd be stressed too. This is affecting my children. My children. My friends. These two little babies right here. This has affected my family. And it's still affecting my family. And it's affecting their families. And their children. And their daughters. And their sons. And their nephews and nieces. So if you don't have the decency to let me say what I got to say, then why are we all here?
It's how you're saying it, Tom.
The way I'm saying it, because I'm crying, I'm hurting inside, and I'm loud.
That may be, but
And
you
there's
don't
nothing I
represent
can
us.
do. There's
You need
nothing
help.
that the police can, there's nothing that you can do. You told us, the family, you telling us, it is the responsibility. Public engagement. Public engagement. This is the public.
I understand that.
You're telling it's our responsibility. It is our responsibility. It's the parents, it's the grandparents, it's the mothers, it's the fathers. Come on.
Who do you want to fix this? The only person.
You.
The only person.
You.
Yeah.
You.
No.
All of us need to come together as a tribe and fight this war on drugs.
You need to look in the mirror.
Do I look like I'm on drugs?
No. I don't know.
I'm not. I've never done that poison. Ever.
Well, and what I'm saying is, most of the problem with this whole system.
It's broken down. This system's broken down,
Are you
guys.
responsible for me?
In my heart, I am, yes.
Or am I responsible for you?
In your heart, you should be.
To a point.
Yeah, but
Are
you discrediting my faith?
No.
Are you discrediting what I say is wrong?
Are you going to listen to what I'm saying?
I am listening.
I care for you.
I care for you too.
But if you don't care enough about yourself, I'm not talking about.
I do care about myself, sir. That's why I'm
We're
here.
talking generality.
In general, I care about all of us.
Look, if this man's doing drugs, hope you know.
I surely try everything to help. I've done it for this town.
Okay, so let me finish.
For 8 years, I've done it in this town.
I can care my heart out to that man. But until he cares enough for himself to say, I'm
That's
trying
right.
to change.
I don't believe in
So the
addiction.
first responsibility is of the person. We are gathered here to try to help
Yeah,
people.
we were gathered here. And if you have sure willpower, you can defeat anything in this world. Drug addiction, alcoholism. God is there to help us all.
Bless the person.
That's his choice. But see, we are here because our choice. Our choice is what are we going to do about this? It's killing our kids. It's killing our families. And you tell them, you know what? It's a responsibility. You. Your neighbors do it. Your daughters do it. Your kids do it. Turn their ass in. This is what it's all about here.
First responsibility.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys, if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
You and I have had many talks.
This is too stressful. And I did take my blood pressure medicine before I came.
Well, is there anyone who has some more questions? Because this lady in the pink would like to ask a question. And then we have a couple more. Go ahead, please speak right into the microphone so it carries better. Thank you all.
I'm not sure if this would be directed to Whittaker or, I'm trying to remember names and I'm really bad at names.
Just ask the question and whoever thinks they.
I'll try not to take up too much time. What kind of services does an inmate receive when they're incarcerated? Because I'm guessing probably most of the inmates are addicts.
Okay, what kind of services do inmates receive? Well, yeah, I do. I understand. I will say that some of what you say is true. A high percentage of the folks that come to the Darke County Jail do have some connection to substance abuse. Some are worse than others. Some it could be, a weekend drinking issue. But there is drugs and alcohol connected to a lot of the people that are in the county jail. So what do? We first of all, we don't provide addiction services like it's an inpatient type of setup. It doesn't work that way. We don't have the ability or the resources to do that. But what we do is, when an inmate comes in, first of all, as far as if they are addicted or substance abusers on an opiate or heroin or something like that, we treat that. We treat the nausea. We treat the withdrawal symptoms, but we don't give them methadone. We don't give them Vivitrol at that point or anything to treat that. They essentially have to dry out cold turkey for however many days they're there. And if heroin is a connection to the reason they were charged that they're in there, that's what we need to do anyways, because if we can get them dried out, they have a clearer mind when it comes time to interact with their attorney, with the court system, and things like that, so they have a better understanding. If they need mental health services, if they feel suicidal, if they feel just generally down because of the circumstances they're in, all they have to do is ask for mental health services, and we make a phone call and someone comes to the jail. Now that may not happen like 15 minutes or 20 minutes, but we make the call, and if anybody needs mental health services, they receive that. That doesn't matter whether they're already sentenced, because your Darke County Jail holds two kinds of people. People who are already sentenced and convicted of a crime, and those who have not been sentenced are being held pre-trial. So they have not been convicted yet, and they have to be handled differently. They're in two different areas. But either one of those, either side of that, if they need services, all they have to do is ask for it, we bring it in. Reverend Wiltshire, he's been known to come out and speak with people that he deals with through Hope and Recovery. They're essentially his clients, his folks, and if they make a request of him, he's clergy, he has a function in our community, and he is allowed to come in and meet with those clients. And we offer that same opportunity to some others. But as far as having like a group therapy session for addicts and that does not happen. And the reason it doesn't happen is our jail was not big enough. It was never designed for that.
Is there a chance of maybe changes, that changing for the addicts that's being incarcerated maybe say 3 months?
Let me jump on his answer. When people come in addicted, he's the biggest dry out center in the county.
Oh,
I mean, forced dry out. They just gotta keep their guts out until they get through the DT. If the charge has been filed in their jail, our pretrial department, the probation, goes out and starts evaluating people because if they're using opiates, they're not going to get off on their own. So medically assisted treatment is being provided. So we're going to evaluate them. We'll get them over to family health if they're interested in medically assisted treatment. So probation officers are going to set up an appointment. Job and Family Services, Gracie Ratliff's department helps with the Medicaid clearance. We're usually running over to Family Health. We have a coordinator from Recovery and Wellness Center in the office, so we get this done faster. But once they get through the DT, the dry out, the probation officer get them lined up to get into some sort of Vivitrol program. They evaluate if you're medically eligible. If you're medically eligible, you go over. We give them a furlough and a ride to make sure they make it there, and then they get a ride back. So they go see the doctor, get all the tests done, they'll get a sample. If they're eligible and they don't have any adverse reactions from their sample, a week later they'll go back.
This is before they get released.
A week later they'll go back,
Yeah.
get a Vivitrol shot, and then often that's a condition of bond. Okay, the condition of bond is what they want. What I want is sober people that aren't going to happen again. This is all primarily the pretrial, but if we get people that are already on probation after they're convicted, and they have the same relapse, then we're going to try to do the same thing along the way. If somebody is in recovery wellness center, some sort of hope and recovery treatment and relapses, he's going to try to come in and deliver services. We're going to try to figure out why it is that they relapse and get them into that program. But it's never been the sheriff's responsibility to do all this.
Right.
He's doing what he ought to be doing. You know, they don't have a lot of extra classrooms.
My concern is
Recovery
just
Wellness
all
Center,
the deaths
Gideon's
when
come in.
an addict is released from jail and dies 24 hours later.
And you understand how that happens or why that happens?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
So-
they've been clean for 2 months or 30 days, and they go out and they do some dope and think they can do what they were doing before.
That's exactly, their tolerance level drops.
My daughter was one of them,
Okay.
and actually, she only tested for fentanyl. She was given fentanyl.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
that's an opiate, so we would
Right.
look at that. And
Right.
if they decline, and we're not supposed to force people to the doctor.
Right,
So if they decline Vivitrol, they're gonna also be cutting off their chance to get out early. It's approving, it's a letting out of some line, like parents do, see how your child
Right.
reacts to it. If they don't react well, you pull them back in.
And the other concern of mine is a lot of the addicts that's on Vivitrol, and I do know a few that I have spoke to personally that I speak to, are using other drugs.
But we know
And
that.
they're not receiving
We know that.
mental health services. And that's what I'm trying to get them to do.
Yeah, it's not that easy, because people that use opiates don't say, hey, I think I'll use opiates.
Well, I just didn't know
It's
if
the
everybody here
problem.
is aware of that.
Yeah, it's the underlying problem. Why are they using drugs?
Exactly.
Because there's always been a drug of the day. How many years you been doing this? A long time. I've been doing this 30-some. There's always a drug of the day. Right now, the drug of the day is a huge problem with greater addictive problems, tendencies, cut across all social and economic, so it's a bigger problem,
Right.
as you well know.
So when, maybe this is directed to you, Judge Hines. When you see this problem or you have a case come before you or whatever, and you know this person's an addict clearly, and say you order only, you need to go to recovery, do you order them to go to mental health services too, or do you just push recovery on them?
The standard order is follow all treatment recommendations for substance abuse, mental health, job training, cognitive behavior. So I never drill down to what it ought to be, because that's not my license. I don't know,
Oh, okay,
I don't
that's
know
not you.
what their real problem is.
Right.
I don't know if they're a substance abuser
Right.
or if they're a mental health who's using drugs to mask the mental health problem. Sometimes they don't even know until they get sobered up and long enough to realize it's a mental health problem. It just looks like something. The wrong thinking that gets people to this point isn't so easy as if you can put them in this category, this category. There's a lot of what they call dual diagnosis.
Exactly, that's what I'm getting
So we order them to go to whatever treatment is necessary from all the treatment providers. We added a second field officer to go find people that don't make their appointments.
Right.
But that's still not that easy, because when they move or we can't find them, yeah, we issue warrants, you try to find them, we try to find them. How do you intervene? We want to partner with parents.
Right.
We want to know who their support system is, get to know our
Exactly.
probation officers. When we can't find them, we might know where they are, so we can do tough love.
Exactly, I agree with that. Let me see if I can state this right. Boy, I hope I don't get attacked in here.
You're all right.
Say my son, okay, which is not mentally stable. I'm not going to mention any names because you'll probably know who it is. Not mentally stable whatsoever. Been trying to get him into mental health, couldn't get him to go. Couple of deputies helped me escort him in there, which did some dabs with some drugs at the same time. Yeah, won't take his medication, 8 different medications. And when he comes in front of you, which he's going to be coming in front of you, can he get inpatient treatment of his choice, which is probably my choice, but if he agrees to it, does it have to be here in this county, his treatment? And I'm not talking about a 3-day stay or a week, I'm talking treatment. And we're talking somebody mentally disturbed, not just an addict, somebody that's not right.
Let me answer it this way. You're the most effective treatment agency there is. Okay, I don't know, you are. Everybody here is much more effective at some point in time with their family than I could ever be, because I'm way, way, way behind the curve. I'm way behind his curve.
Right.
He's usually way behind the facts. They apprehend when they can, but usually the problem happens like ongoing. It exacerbates itself to the point where it becomes criminal. So the first place for an intervention, the first place to solve the problem is you. If you know this is going on, and you have any opportunity to get them into a treatment program, coax them into it, way before I got to order it. Because by the time they get to me,
That's what I'm
it's a
working on
big,
right now.
huge
Actually, I
problem.
think I have it, but I just didn't know
Yeah.
that
So if you can get them into a
that could
treatment program,
happen.
do it before they get arrested.
Right.
Do it before they start acting out in the public. Do it before the mayor starts hearing people call
Well,
and
the
saying.
daughter of my the
Kids
death
need
of my
to-
daughter and all this happened within a year to me.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
I'm not finding fault, I'm just saying, you're gonna see it way before it becomes
Really?
illegal. Then the answer is, once they're under the court's jurisdiction, we try to do what we can do, but there's only so many facilities available.
Exactly.
There's a lot
Right.
of walk-away facilities that we order people to go to, but you can't lock them in because they're not set up that way. And we get people walk away from positive
Oh,
treatment
yeah.
programs, so then it's a violation. But you don't get treatment in jail, you won't get treatment where you're not in jail. That's the whole cycle we're trying to break. The Tri-County Alcohol, Drug Abuse, Mental Health Agency, you folks pay for the levy. They spend $600,000 a year at a 30-day mental health treatment program called the Nova House in Dayton. It's gold standard, Senator. It's a great program. ODRC, the state's got money in it.
And do
There's a lot of
they
skin in the
get
game.
dual diagnosis there too?
They got a dual diagnosis unit, it's
Yes.
great. So many people walk out the door, you can't even believe it. Because anybody thinking in their right mind would stick around. Everybody going in as a patient doesn't have their right mind.
Right.
It's a really difficult problem to get people to stay where they ought to, because the reason they're in there is because they don't think right. And most of you
Exactly.
folks can't even wrap your brain around it because you don't think right. You almost have to take what you know, flip it upside down, and say that's the new reality. We look at everything completely backwards because that's the way it works a lot of times on the street. What were you thinking? They weren't. Why did you do this when nobody in their right mind would do this? Because they're not thinking right.
Right.
Now, I'm not even talking mental health problems, I'm just thinking the whole psyche of drug abuse. The criminal conduct just completely backwards.
Right. All right, well, I guess that was it. Thank you.
Might have been an answer there somewhere.
About the trafficking side.
You need to speak into the microphone so everybody can hear you behind you.
This concerns the trafficking side. I don't know anything about the drug problem. How can traffic officers, like, my brother OD'd in this town 9 months ago, died.
Can you hear it?
It took me less than 1 month to find out who said the drugs. I reported that. I called your office, and they told me to contact the police over here, which I did. And I reported that it's been 8 months, and the witness that knows everything has still not been talked to. And I know the two people that done it. And I don't want to accuse anybody of it, it just seems to me like nothing's being done, and
I can't speak for the Arcanum Police Department, okay? And I'm not gonna speak specifically to your case, but you have some questions in there that maybe some other people might also wonder about as well. So, I'll talk a little bit about that, help out that. That's up to the mayor whether she wants to get into the police side of things or whatever. Okay, first of all, when someone dies of an overdose, okay, and we do our investigation into that, it would seem reasonable to think that we should go after the person, the drug dealer, who gave that person the drugs and charge them with some sort of murder charge. That's what you think. But Ohio law on murder and similar charges don't quite read or don't have the elements to make that. And you have to understand that oftentimes when someone is a drug addict or a substance abuser and they inject or they snort or they smoke or they do a drug, they do it themselves, okay? They put the needle in the arm themselves most of the time. They smoke it themselves. Whatever way they took the drug, they did themselves. Oftentimes, addicts know that what they're doing is high-risk behavior. But they know it. It's the addiction they can't stop. So we have that problem, all right? That doesn't mean that we don't think we shouldn't hold those dealing the drugs accountable, okay? The way drugs are typically brought into your community, not just Arcanum, but county and Greenville and any other community in this county, is at small amounts, okay? So either the user goes down, gets a ride, or drives themselves down to Dayton, somewhere around Salem Avenue, Gettysburg Avenue, that area. There's a McDonald's down in that area that's well known for a place where it happens. All they got to do is drive around, look for the right person, and if not, if they drive around long enough, the right person's going to come up to them and know. Because when someone from Darke County with Darke County plates shows up in that neighborhood, they know what they're there for. And they're going to walk right out, and there's going to be a transaction. And the drugs are going to come in the form of gel caps. You've probably seen or heard about this, okay? They sell for about $5-6 a gel cap. There's somewhere around maybe 50 milligrams in a gel cap. Now, the opiate or heroin abuser, they think or they hope they're buying heroin.
Right.
But in most cases, they're not. They're buying fentanyl. And it's typically not by choice, but that's what they're getting, okay? Some folks around here, what they'll do is instead of buying 1 or 2 caps for themselves and then coming back and using it, or using it right there on the spot, they'll go right into that McDonald's and they'll inject, and then they'll come back. Or they'll sometimes bring or buy at $5 or $6 a cap. They'll buy maybe 10 caps. They'll take enough money with them to buy 10 caps. They will come back up here and they will sell to their folks that they know that are on drugs themselves, and they'll sell those caps at $10 a cap. So they can make a little money, cover their gas money. That's the kind of drug traffickers we have. These fall in a level of felony 4 and felony 5, and those are the lowest level felony drug trafficking cases, okay? So we don't have big time drug dealers that are breaking heroin off of a brick, okay? That's really not happening in our county that we know of. I have no evidence, no intelligence to suggest that. The way your heroin drug trafficking is happening is the way I just described it. So their dealer is down in Dayton, and oftentimes the person who buys the drugs doesn't even know who the dealer is. They don't know his name, okay? Now, I'm not saying that's not the situation that you have here, okay? So what we want to do is, when they come up here, a lot of times when we do death investigations or overdose investigations, you can assume that a lot of the folks involved aren't cooperative with those of us in the uniform. We can ask questions. Matter of fact, I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to take a shot in the dark, 90 to 95% of the time, by the time someone calls 911 on an overdose or an overdose death, our crime scene has already been cleaned up, the drugs have been picked up and taken care of, and we have no physical evidence, okay? That happens, that's just, if I go to an overdose death scene and the needle is still there, that is an unusual day for us.
Would you leave that needle there after you took the body out?
No way.
I walked in there and there was a whole plate of fentanyl with a credit card and straw still laying on the dresser.
I'm going to tell you that the Darke County Sheriff's Office would not do that. We would seize all evidence. We would obtain a search warrant if necessary. I mean, there's a lot of things that we would do in an investigation.
I'm not trying to interrupt you or be...
Okay, that's fine.
But, I know the drugs are involved in Dayton, involved in Greenville. I know who sold them. I know who did it. Y'all, if they're finding their names on the good, I'm not going to bring it up. If I can't get this town to at least talk to the witness, I mean, after 8 months I haven't spoke to him, who do I go to? Or do I just have to take care of the problem myself?
I don't want to put the mayor on the spot.
You come to me.
I say 8 months is a little bit, 8 months is a little bit long.
Pardon?
8 months is a little bit long to talk to a witness.
I will agree with you.
I mean, I'm not causing blame, I'm not yelling at anybody. I don't even care if they don't get charged.
I just want to say to you all that there is only one way that I'm going to know some of these things. It's if you come to me and we start addressing it. And everyone in this room is here for a reason. And mostly it's because you're concerned about a friend, a family member, someone like this. And the only way, these are all professionals that have rules they have to go by. They can only go step by step. But you all can get together as brothers and sisters and talk to each other ask your questions, find out what the answers are to these problems, and work together and help each other.
Thank you.
I just want to know about their medical marijuana. I thought it's against federal law what marijuana is. I think the people of Ohio voted, we didn't want it in our state, but still, the legislature put it in. And also, will this put, next thing is recreational marijuana, and will this lead to other stuff?
Sure. Ohio did vote down a specific medical marijuana proposition that was put up by some private individuals into our Constitution. As you may be aware, the citizens can, with enough signatures, amend our Constitution directly. The other way is for us in the legislature to put something in front of the voters so that you can do it. And yes, the voters turned that down, that episode down, or that particular proposal down. Why we went ahead and passed a medical marijuana law is because, and I can only speak for myself and my vote, and I did vote yes, is because the people who paid for that were going to come back, and they're going to keep coming back. And what Ohio has is a very, very strict medical marijuana law. There's no smoking it. There's no growing your own. You have to have a referral from a doctor, and it's tightly controlled. But it was enough to at least keep the people who wanted to bring recreational marijuana to Ohio in a much looser law where you can grow it at home, and you can have so many seeds and plants, and you can smoke it, and employers had to accommodate it because you don't have to do that in Ohio under our law. It was to keep that out, and we knew that whether we assumed that if in the General Assembly we took some action to allow people who want to explore medical marijuana to do so. And again, they'll use tints, they'll use oils, they'll have other ways to administer that. It won't be smoking it. Then we have a list of like 18 or 19 conditions that you qualify for, and that's what you can get your referral for. So we have a very tight law that's kind of complicated so that we don't have recreational. Now, having said that, our Constitution is our Constitution, and if somebody wants to bring recreational marijuana to Ohio, I can tell you the Ohio legislature won't do that. And I can't speak for the Ohio legislature, but I will. Because that law, the medical marijuana law, barely passed in the Ohio Senate. And if you were to bring a recreational marijuana law, which has been proposed in the past, it never goes anywhere. So you won't see that legislatively for the coming years. But there's nothing that can stop a group, whether they're from out of state or whomever, tomorrow from beginning to circulate petitions for recreational marijuana and put it on our ballot. And all we can do to stop that is to be educated voters and get out and vote. And that is all we can do.
You might mention there's local ordinances already being passed by some areas about marijuana.
That's correct. We, for the second time today, we'll get to mention how we let our locals, we in the state are not telling the local jurisdictions, the local governments, what to do. Our local governments can opt out so that they won't have a dispensary in their jurisdiction. They won't have a growing area in their jurisdiction. So our locals can kind of influence whether or not it's available. Because you're right, the medical professionals who've spoken to me over the years, a lot of them, I won't say all of them, but a lot of them do think that marijuana is a gateway drug. And some of the folks that they deal with on a daily basis in the addiction and recovery area often, but not always, start with marijuana and also others.
And if I'm not mistaken, didn't Representative Huffman say that you can't get high with this?
That's correct.
There's no high to the medical marijuana. You can't take it to make yourself feel better. It takes all the
THC, yeah. So the medical, the medical marijuana that Ohioans could be using next year won't have THC, which is the compound that gets one high. That's also.
and that's why nobody else can grow it at home.
We are in our second reading to pass legislation that it cannot be manufactured, grown, and sold in our building.
Go ahead. Run, quick.
I came up here with a couple of questions. I came here today thinking I was going to get some information about Arcanum. You made me a little nervous when you said Darke County down in Gettysburg. I teach in inner city Dayton, right off in the school right off of Gettysburg, and the things that I see, people here can never even dream about seeing. You know, when I see drug deals go down when my kids are on the playground, that's something that doesn't happen around here. I guess my big question, and maybe it's big, I live on right by the park, and just for Arcanum, what is the drug problem in Arcanum, and is it safe for me to take grandkids or school kids or, you know, all hours of the night there are cars in the park. There's cars parked across from the pool and going in the woods. I think just for me, maybe for everybody else, where does Arcanum stand in all this drugs? And I know we don't maybe tell you everything, but I know my neighbor and I, we can't call the police every 20 minutes or, you know, it happens a lot. I mean, at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, if I'm up, which is sometimes happens, you know, when I see cars sitting out by the bathrooms, and why? The park closed at 10. You know, it's just me.
548-20, and we'll get someone there. That's the only answer I can give.
Okay, and I hear you on that, and I understand. And they're going to come down my road in their black and white car, and as soon as they are shown what happened to the people over in the park, they're going to leave. So maybe there's another direction that they could come in?
I just said that's any kind of crime. You know, as soon as they see that cruiser, the
bicycles?
light shine, they're gone.
The bicycles, and maybe this all could be part of a neighborhood watch program in
Exactly,
Arcanum?
that's what we've got to work on. We've got to get the community together, working on these things, because our police department cannot solve it.
I know that, and I worry about the kids who come down and they're in the parks doing different things, and you know, you just wonder, it's not the kids when they group together aren't doing anything bad. I mean, I see that all the time too, and you can't label kids and say that they're bad kids, but you do wonder about some things sometimes, and you know, I just want to keep Arcanum safe so that we don't have to deal with what I see every single day, so I just, hopefully that maybe we can all come together, and I feel the pain for all these people. I can't imagine what they're going through, and I appreciate all that you're doing. It's just what I do and where I come from and what I come home to, I want to come home to safe Arcanum. So, and if we can come up with some kind of program, I think that would be really good. Thanks.
Sure. I think you're kind of getting this perspective that the drug dealers are these dirty old people that live down in Dayton and are sneaking up. I hate to tell you that they look just like you, but maybe 20 or 30 years younger. And they're not all nasty people. Most of them, somebody mentioned some medical people. I remember one time we had 4 nurses in our program, all who got hurt on the job. And they took the extra medication so they could show up and work. It's hard for a 5-foot-tall, 90-pound nurse to handle somebody like that. That's how they're getting hurt. They're not nasty people. But they hurt so much, started stealing some of the medication. Some of it was in nursing homes, some of them were people that saved a lot of our lives. But they got hooked on drugs. And a lot of them are people that are dealing with emotional issues. We hear a lot about PTSD, and we think it's just military. There are a whole lot of women in Darke County that have PTSD because they've been assaulted. They've been beaten by their husbands, or their children that have been attacked by their husbands, or by their parents, or neighbors. These are the people that are using the drugs. And some of them are kids that deal with the peer pressure, but they got started drinking at home, or they started using marijuana with mom and dad at the age of 10 or 12. I remember a 12-year-old, a girl, she was 26 at the time. She told me that she used to sell drugs in Greenville high schools at the age of 12. She was a dealer in Darke County. At 27, she died of a heroin overdose down in Eden. Wonderful girl. If she was sitting in this room, you would have no idea that she was in it. These are the people that we're talking about. And what that gentleman went through up there is what parents are dealing with. I hear an awful lot of stuff about what are the courts gonna do? What's the sheriff gonna do? Actually, we had a program for years. It's called the Ohio Department of Correction.
Yeah.
This gentleman, that didn't solve the problem. We filled all of our jails. How many prisons do we have in Ohio?
I know that they're overfilled by over 50% overfilled.
But they were all people that were using drugs. So they weren't getting the help they needed. So the legislator said, take care of it here. And that's what got these two people involved. But the biggest problem in recovery is the drug user doesn't want to get well. And that's why your friend died. He didn't want to get well.
You know what the thing is, guys.
The reality is, you've had plenty of time to talk. So I'm talking now. I've been sitting here shutting up the whole meeting.
What can you guys do for our community?
There's a damn thing we can do until the person wants to take care of themselves.
I understand that, but it's not like incarcerating them. There's drug courts to put these people
That's
not
what
only
he's
in
got.
the Monday program, but when they come back to our community, there's nothing here for the community to help them.
You're
go
here.
through that. I mean, I tried.
I gotta leave. I'm just gonna say what I was gonna say coming in. If you wanna do something, support a AA&A group. Support a Celebrate Recovery group. What's that mean? It means open your doors, let the people that work in groups come in, accept people with substance use problems, give them space. Celebrate Recovery includes a meal. It's a sense of community for people that feel isolated. It's going to take some time and effort, but if you have a community room, if you have an extra classroom, if you have people in the church or community who want to say, we'll get behind acknowledging these people can't be marginalized because it's us. It's not them anymore, it's us. Then find some way to say, okay, we're going to get them into the community, we're going to work with them, support them. That's something you can do. John knows about Celebrate Recovery. AA&A is a faith-based group.
Al-Anon.
Al-Anon. Oh, just find
Hope-
it. Find
Hope
a
Anon.
space. Say you're welcome. We'll support you. We'll be here behind you. When you fall, we'll help pick you up. But that's the challenge. Thank you for doing this, Joe. I'm going to go to a retirement party, so...
Just one moment, please. Yeah.
So I can't get past him.
Oh, shoot.
This is the second meeting we've had here, and we've heard a lot of really sad stories, and we've heard about what resources are available. But what I'm hearing is there are not enough resources, and Judge, what you said, we need to get more local people involved. Is there a possibility with the professionals within the county to have a train-the-trainer program for lay people that would like to help?
Here's a good example. There's a Celebrate Recovery AA group that was in Ansonia because the one in Greenville closed. They wanted to try it, and for 6 months, they did. Celebrate Recovery has Train the Trainer. Now that group is going to move to Greenville, so it's still going to be in Greenville. John knows how this works. They found a night that seemed to work well for the community, and there's a 6 or 8 week overlap between the new group starting and the old one phasing out. And that can be done. It's not hard. These are all lay people. These are people like us that are saying, okay, our probation department sponsors 3 AA groups. We give them space and encouragement, and we don't have anybody there because we're not allowed to. All we did was find a space because they didn't have a home. So as soon as you talk to John, as soon as he knows that there's a need for an AA group, you have to have a facilitator, somebody knows how to do it, then it's literally about space. And if you can do more than that by saying, we'll give you some coffee, we'll make it a nice place, we won't stick you back in some place you wouldn't want to do yourself, it's integrating people into the community.
And then unlicensed lay people that even with the training, given the nature of litigation, are there any legislative protections for those of us that are not licensed with all these letters behind our name?
It's probably not. AA is meant to be a lay-led group. I don't know what the liability is for opening your doors to letting people in, except for slip and fall laws, so it has to be a safe space. So if it's open and obvious and the lights are on, I've never had any litigation involving an AA. somebody comes to the AA group, goes out afterwards and gets drunk, has a car accident, that's not on you. So I have to ask them but you always wouldn't think that way. You always wouldn't think what could go wrong, try to solve it. But it's not. Will you hold this for a minute? Just hold it. You can hold it. Oh, I can right back in. Okay, thanks.
The question's never been asked yet. Deputy and the judge both are the frontline people. If you had the ability tomorrow to change the laws on habitual drug abuse, including habitual DUIs, and sometimes in state of Florida, it's up to 50th DUI. You've never read that, but it's true. If you had the ability to change the laws, how would you change it?
I'm going to correct you. You know, I should respect my elders. The chief's not the front line, you folks are. Because you know about this way before. So the front line is get it out there. Look for help. Try to figure out, before it becomes criminal conduct, what you can do. And it's not going to show up as like opiate addiction the first time. The problem's going to percolate and start before it gets that bad.
But the frustration from everybody has always been in law enforcement is the swing and door. You know, just over and over and over.
That's the whole relapse cycle. If I was going to change anything, it would be change your perspective on the conduct. I don't know. There's a moral failure of people who agree that once they're addicted, every time they use is a moral failure. Then it becomes a part of the problem. So if you start seeing this the same way as you would see diabetes, you know, if you're type 2, this is bad. I'm going to walk in. My wife says, never do this. I never listened to her. I wish I would. Right? Okay. My brother has type 2 diabetes. Why he eats candy bars and sugar-filled food is beyond me, but he does. So I'm sitting there going, he didn't ask for diabetes, but he doesn't do anything to stop it. You know, he's got to own the responsibility to do something about it. And that's where it all has to start in his wife's level, at his family's level, the people he works with, saying, put down the donut. But if you want a guy to move a refrigerator for you, he's the dude you want because he's strong. He's a big guy. So you have to understand that you're the first line. And then if I see that as not a moral failure, but a health problem, I'm willing to treat the health problem. Narcan, somebody asked about Narcan. You know, yeah, I don't want to waste a bunch of public money, but if it's my son or daughter that needs Narcan, I want you to keep going until there's no Narcan left. And you would want that for yours too. You can't say 2 doses, you're done. You can say that to the neighbor. You can say that to a stranger. But it's your family, and that's the kind of attention it has to have, because this is a medical problem. It's not a moral crisis. The first decision is moral failure. You ought to know that. After that, you got to say this is going to be a health problem. That's what I would change, Gary, if I could. And that's what you're doing right now. You're starting to recognize this as not just a moral failure. It's a social problem because, look, think of this as diabetes. How are you going to treat diabetes? Well, we're going to keep working on treating diabetes, and everybody around the donut hole has to be willing to say, don't eat the donut. And why are you eating the donut? And what can we do to not eat donuts?
You're making me feel guilty about having cookies.
Coffee's really
It's over.
Thank you, folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I believe too, and I'm going to give the judge comments and nobody else has any questions as well yet. So, and it's tough to summarize and wrap things up. For me, except to piggyback on what the judge said, which is that, you know, this is going to take, you know, we've been trying to solve this problem for years. These guys have been trying to solve the problem for years. Is it getting better? I don't know. I don't know that it is, but it is going to take an attitude of crisis among our communities, I think. All the people who aren't at this meeting today and aren't at the city council meeting may or may not be reading the newspaper and get them to understand that this is a crisis, because as the judge said, you guys are the front lines, you're on, you'll see things that will get communicated to the chief deputy and to the police chief who works with us and at the county level, whether it's changing laws, which is not a quick process. Is it spending money? That's not a quick process either. There's a lot of fights over where to spend that money best. But these are conversations that just continue that need to be had. But it is about recognizing that this is a crisis and it impacts everybody in the community, even for those who never leave their house or never leave their yard or aren't very involved. It's impact. And so Joe, thank you for having me, and I appreciate the chance to engage in this conversation. And we'll look forward.
I've got somebody who's going to ask a question. I don't know if you were going to.
Okay, I wasn't sure you were like coming at me or you wanted me to ask. So, all right, fair enough.
I got a question. What do we have to do when laws change? Then you go to Washington and fight for it.
Well,
He's in Columbus.
I'm the guy who's
Whoever's not good.
right. So when it comes to how do we get laws, typically we are hearing from. It depends on who you are. I'm not a lawyer by training, and I'm proud to say that. So that means that I need my county prosecutors, I need the Judge Hines of the world, and I need the sheriffs and the chief deputies and law enforcement to come to me and say, here's a problem that we have. And in the Ohio Senate, we have certain members, particularly lawyers, who are more criminally oriented, and they, those are the people that tend to go to and educate members like me and say, this is what it is, and this is why we need to do that. For example, we just passed, probably in the last month or so, a Senate bill that changed the definition of trafficking for fentanyl. We did that because apparently the definition for trafficking had to do with amounts of heroin, which were like baggy size or something like that. Well, a lethal dose of fentanyl is quite small. And so a baggy size of fentanyl would kill the entire town several times over. So by changing the definition of trafficking so that it's only this amount now, you can take some of the traffickers, somebody who might normally not be able to be prosecuted as a trafficker for carrying that much fentanyl can now go to jail. And that was because of people out in the field saying this is a problem because even 5 years ago nobody knew what fentanyl was. And now we're learning what carfentanil is, which is even more different. And so it's a little bit of whack-a-mole where we're having to get, they're ahead of us. Earlier, things going on the streets that us in our Civil War era building aren't quite aware of. And so there's communication going on. I gather that.
I would like to talk to the deputy superintendent in a meeting. I've got a movie on trafficking. It's a true story. Regular movie. It's traffic. And probably the parents would have to sign notes to have it shown at school. It's an older movie.
Well, you can talk to them after he has to take off. So.
Still happens.
Right, well, as we talked earlier, it's talking to the kids early on. So anything we can do to educate kids, even if that means frightening the kids a little bit. I mean, we show them wrecked cars before prom just to remind them of the dangers of drunk driving. There's no reason we can't do that so that if they're a little scared to touch something, then so be it. If they're too smart to touch something, that's even better. But if it's a little fear, as a father, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much.
I'd like to follow up on a question I think you raised about what can the community do? And hopefully we try to do some mentoring with people on drugs, especially the younger ones in their 20s and 30s. It's a pretty disciplined program. We're kind of making a 1 to 2 year commitment. There's also a program through Judge Hines' office that does some work with people that aren't on drugs. If you're willing to make that kind of a commitment, there are some programs and we do some trainings. Another big thing is prevention. We really didn't get into that. It's amazing how many people that we have in our program who are probably in their 40s and 50s, and they have difficulty reading, that haven't completed high school, mentoring them or helping them get through to their GEDs. Another program that maybe the superintendent can speak to. A lot of the kids of addicts don't spend a lot of time on their homework, so doing some tutoring. We have 4 churches here on this one street. Maybe they could all get together and have some times where kids can come in and not lose their reading skills. I'm sure we see some of that in the schools throughout the year, their math skills. What you're doing also is building up relationships with them, some positive. And one of the biggest things that occurs with addicts is that all their relationships are negative. Even within the faith-based program that we have, ultimately it's that relationship with Christ that's going to fill the void, that the lack of alcohol and drugs.
Amen.
They don't just get that faith by saying, I'm going to get you baptized and we're going to get this drugs out of it. It don't work. Because there's a lot of people that go to church every week are addicts. But it is the relationship. Usually that relationship begins with the people that have been in recovery for a number of years. And one of our programs developed into a Bible study. And the people that are in that program have the longest probably sobriety right now. And their faith. They get invited by somebody from those meetings to attend a church. You can light up your sign out there and say, drug addicts welcome, but until somebody goes out and says, why don't you join me Sunday, and you pick them up and bring them in, then they're going to start hearing what's going on in here. They're not going to hear it out there, and they're not going to walk into your buildings. Because quite honestly, a lot of churches don't want those people in. Be honest about it. You're probably not that way because you're here. But a lot of our places are like that. But to come together, work on some of the things. The young, when the fentanyl and the heroin are gone, it's going to be another drug. There's always going to be something out there because people don't want to accept reality. And that's the reason most of it are on. They're in pain. There's some mental health issues. How many in here are willing to, I know there's a mental health tax on this fall or this spring, whichever it is. How many are willing to really double their taxes for mental health? I don't see too many hands up. The reality is, there aren't that many mental health people in here to handle everybody with mental health issues.
Yeah.
There's not enough. How many years ago did we lay that thing out at the corrections board to give you about 50 cells, classrooms for doing what we're talking about now? It was going to require us almost a rebuilding of the jail, which was back in the 70s?
Late 70s.
Late 70s. Nobody wants to pay for that stuff. The problem is us.
But they are paid
Well,
in a roundabout
actually, you're
way.
paying for it through Medicaid, because 90% of the people that go into treatment are on Medicaid.
Yeah.
And the other question I had for the Congress, for the legislator is, if you get a felony conviction, you cannot get a job in most places. So there's a whole bunch of people out there that would like to that are doing well, but they can't get a job because of the law.
Right.
And that law needs to be changed. And when you're sitting around doing nothing, or you're doing cash, you're still going up and getting your food stamps and everything else, which is costing the society. If you haven't got a felony conviction, he can probably speak more to this. A lot of people that are arrested now do not get a felony charge. They do it's called in lieu of conviction. They're pleading guilty. We get them into the rehab program, so they don't have that felony 5 on their record. Because Whirlpool's not going to.
So I'm college educated and I'm addicted to drugs and I can't even get a job stocking grocery shelves in the middle of the night. It's insane.
Because of a history that he had years ago.
Yeah.
And I can remember people that, of course, then what they do is they lie on their application. It had been 10 years since he had a felony conviction and he was fired because he didn't put that on his application. So what they do is they go out and get cash jobs. With a guy that will roof your house and do a little bit of minor construction. All this stuff is also part of the problem that we have. One thing I would encourage, if any of you have kids that are on drugs, there's literature out there on our programs, bring them to the meetings. Attend with them. Now, when you go home, you can talk about whatever the topic was. Because most of the people come to our meetings because they're required to have a certain number of signatures. The ones that are doing the best in recovery are through the court program, and they're doing it because they want to. And that's about 10% of the people that go through the rate is pretty frustrating. And you don't have to be licensed to do a lot of it. I don't do any counseling, but I'll do some mentoring, or I do spiritual direction. Is there any difference? I don't get paid for it, that's the difference. The guy that's leading an AA meeting doesn't get paid for it. He's sharing his experiences. He's building a connection with you. A lot of what we're trying to do, though, is get him to fix our health. Boils down to what the judge just said. It's up to these people at our level to start working with kids and raising them totally different than what we have for the last 50 years.
But I believe the state is working on an exemption of the felony problem of employment. That's being discussed.
That's going to open things up for a lot of jobs. There's a lot of it. I always told employers, if you get a person with 5-6 years in recovery, you've got a pretty disciplined person.
We're going to close this meeting now. I hope you guys can stay around if anybody has any questions. John, you sat down too quick. I'm going to ask you to close us in prayer first. And then there are people over here, which I really feel bad about now since Judge Hein said all the bad things he did about sugar. I'm not sure if there are any sugar-free. There are some sugar-free, so you can have that.
I have something really important I want to say.
Sure.
So you all came here, and I think some of you came here and said, what can I do? You want to hear somebody come up and stand up here to tell you what you can do. And one thing, and it don't cost you anything. Okay? One thing. And we haven't talked about this a whole lot up here, but this starts with kids. We've talked about folks that are already addicted, talked about folks that are already in the middle of it, and they're in this cycle they're struggling to get out of. Okay? Let's talk about what are we going to do to stop them from that. And that's this. Every single person in here, I believe, has a connection to a child, a niece, a nephew, a son, a grandson, a granddaughter, maybe a younger sibling, I don't know. Okay? We have to be willing to not make this a taboo subject matter anymore in our homes. And it doesn't cost you anything but a little time to sit down and ask your young folks, teenagers, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, whatever. First, start off with this. What do you know about drugs? Find out what they know. You might be surprised at what they know. And now you know where they're at. What's their thought process? As you start talking to them. Yeah, there's good drugs. There's drugs your doctor gives you. But there's also drugs out there that are not so good for you. Okay? It's just that simple. And the state of Ohio does have a Start Talking. Just Google Ohio Start Talking program. There's all kinds of talking points in there to just start the program. Start the process. It's that simple. That costs none of you anything. That's it. If there was one thing I want you to leave here with, if everybody here went home and sat down with a youthful person and a young person and said, let's talk about this. There's good decisions, there's bad decisions. I just want you to make a good decision. Because the problem is when our kids get on drugs, no matter whether it's alcohol or marijuana or it ends up being a harder drug than that, we're not there. I have kids too. As parents, grandparents, we're not there when that happens. Someone else introduces that typically. So we've got to instruct them and tell them and support them and tell them, make good decisions, good healthy decisions. You guys have that power. That's a wonderful power. You have. No one will ever respond to anything I do. That's all I have.
I also want to say that we
but the last couple of times that she spent a weekend with me, I asked her questions. I was amazed at some of the answers that she gave me. She said, "What do you want to know that for?" I said, "Because I'm ignorant about all of this, and I want to know, and I can't help if I don't know." And that's where we all are. We can't help if we don't know what we're fighting and how to fight it. Thank you.
And I will say that if you belong to a church, get them to open up their doors to start meetings or whatever. If you don't have a church, you're sitting in one now, so you have no excuse. You can't say that I've been there before, now you've been here. So the hard part for some of us, like I'm ecstatic to say I have kids and grandkids, and to my knowledge, none of them are on drugs or ever done drugs. In fact, I know that they've said no because I've gotten phone calls where they said, "These guys are doing marijuana, but Dad, I just don't want to do that." So that's cool. That's a good thing because my wife brought them up right. I'll give her all the credit. But if you want to start something, it's hard for people who are ignorant to start something. This is our best effort at trying to get something started. We've opened our doors twice. If somebody doesn't have a forum to start an Alcoholics Anonymous, whatever, if you're looking for a place and you don't have a church, come talk to me and we'll try to get one started. I know that there are other people that need to network, and don't you guys leave. I need you to talk to that guy walking over there.
Come on, Glenn.
Okay, Steve, your son needs to talk to him because he's doing something that benefit for what you guys were talking, what you called me about. So there are opportunities. We just got to find them. And you're never going to find them if we don't speak up. Amen to that?
Yeah.
John, would you close this prayer, please?
Father, you also know it's on the heart of all those that dealing with addictions, other behaviors. And I know your heart hurts as much as those in attendance here today. When we want to ask what can be done, we often turn to the real thing is the spiritual side. And I just ask today that your Spirit fill the hearts of everyone in this room. That when we pray that the drugs leave our society, that our prayer be, what can I be done? What can I do? What can you do through me? You've given everyone in this room the power to take a step to stop somebody from using or to prevent someone from using. Let our ears be open to your words. Let us get the strength that you give us. And this we ask in your name. Amen.
Water, there's coffee, there's water for tea.